Thanks very much, Cathaoirleach. I want to commend my own colleague, Deputy Tully, in relation to this area. As our spokesperson on disability, she's done huge work in this area, and I also do want to acknowledge that you're here yourself, Minister, and I know that you are passionate about this as well, but we do have to highlight when there's failings. As my colleague Deputy Cullinan has said, we have to lay that at your door and at the government's door. I'm specifically going to speak about services for children this evening in the short time that I have. I think that we know that a lot of families get to a point where they consider residential care not because they want it, but because they get to a breaking point and they don't see an alternative for them. And respite, and the families that I am dealing with and that we are all dealing with, they're looking for such a little amount to begin with. People are coming in looking for maybe one overnight, maybe one day in a space of 2 to 3 months. They're not big asks, and I would say that it's after housing in the constituency office, it's the #1 query that we deal with, and it really can make such a vital difference to families and specifically to children, that they get to stay in their own home, surrounded by their families, surrounded by their community. Whereas it gets to a point sometimes for families where they look at residential because it's that breaking point. In Carlow and Kilkenny in particular, I would say access to disability services is patchy, and that's putting it nicely. We have a situation in Carlow, for example, where there is 23 full-time positions and only 10.5 of those are filled, which I'm always amazed at exactly how a half a position can be filled. How can you have a half a person? But I just want to stress that access and respite on a regular basis can mean the difference between a person remaining in their home. As I said, out of sheer exhaustion, sometimes families look at residential services. I'd also briefly like to mention, in the time I have remaining, in July provision, the programme is an absolute godsend for parents. It did undergo a recent change in eligibility criteria, which I think has put the programme under serious pressure, and this was highlighted in depth at the Autism Committee. I'm concerned to learn that many schools are opting out of the programme due to a range of issues, and I think we really need to try and do something, particularly in relation to staffing. And I would encourage the Minister to ensure that schools are ensuring children with the greatest level of need can access that programme, because again, that's another vital service. And again, it's children that we're failing, and we should be doing absolutely everything we can for our children to reach their potential. Gormagat.